they use auditory, tactile or kinesthetic input to learn their environments. This input should not be considered as lesser sense to use in the absence of vision. Actually, it is another system through which learning takes place. Tactile or kinesthetic input provides students with information about objects which they come across in their daily life. Any visual materials used in the classroom need to be adapted for use by visually impaired students. The visual materials such as charts, models, maps and graphs will have greater educational value for students with visual impairment if they can be read using the sense of touch. For example, outlining map boundaries with string enables students with visual impairment to use their sense of touch to read maps. Whenever teacher use manipulatives, models or other equipment, students with visual impairment need the opportunity to use their auditory, tactile or kinesthetic senses. This will help them to become familiar with the objects to benefit from their use. They learn best with hands-on approach. These learners favor interaction with the physical world. They remember what was done and not what was seen, pinpoint when reading and gestures while talking, and they tend to solve problems by physically grasping objects. Communicate with action verbs and touch, enjoying and learning through games and physical activities that involves movement. Majority of students with visual impairment will be of tactile learners as they lack visual perception. Those who lack complete vision need first-hand experience in learning. This is because they lack visual stimulation related to the development of any concepts such as size, shape and color. To teach them, teacher needs to adapt the learning materials and give examples appropriate to their levels of understanding. Aids are means of conveying non-textual information to visually impaired. It includes tactile representations of pictures, maps, graphs, diagrams and other images. A student with visual impairment can feel the raised lines and surfaces by their tactile sense. This will help them to obtain the same information like sighted students who see through the visual images. A tactile material is not a straight reproduction of the print graphic or a tactile photocopy of the original. For example, it does not include the symbols expected by visual readers. It also avoids color, decorative and artistic additions. Braille produced textbooks that contain tactile graphic aids. Most often, the transcribers produces the graphic along with the Braille text. Sometimes, the transcribers works with another person who does the production of the graphic. Teachers of students with visual impairment often produce tactile graphic aids. This will accompany classroom materials and activities. Also, they produce these kind of aids for other instructional purposes. For example, tactile graphic aids can be used for orientation and mobility training. Regular classroom teacher can provide on-the-spot graphic aid. This can be done with the support of transcribers and with access to appropriate materials. They need only little training to produce these kind of graphic aid. Along with teachers, students who are Braille readers can also involve in preparing tactile learning aids. Tactile materials are currently produced in a variety of ways like collage and thermoform methods. Capsule paper and embossers have made it possible to produce line and shaded images rapidly. Tactile graphics should be made as clear as possible. It is up to the teacher to present the information in a clear, concise manner for the student. This will enable the students to understand the graphic aids without any confusion. Also, teachers should keep students' need and important facts in mind before preparing any tactile graphics. Along with the student need, their age level, knowledge level, skills and their language should also be taken into consideration. Also, omit unnecessary parts of the diagram. This will give space to original shapes and textures which can be presented on a larger and clear scale. In addition, teachers should ensure the requirement of exact measurement of the graphic to be made. Finally, after preparing the graphic aid, it is always recommended to proofread the graphic with fingers and not with eyes. before using it. Designing principles that we discuss here broadly summarizes the keys to readability and give guidance regarding the properties of graphic aid. In addition, the designing principles guide teachers to edit the content and simplify the graphic aid. In order to make the tactile graphic aid readable, it should be properly spaced. The individual components of the graphic must be properly spaced. This will enable students to move their fingers across the area, line, symbol or label. The components must be minimum of quarter inch in size to be read as separate textures. This will enable the students to perceive the graphic aid clearly. With proper space, the tactile aid should follow 1 by 8 inch rule. This indicates that there should be minimum of 1 by 8 inch spacing between any two elements. This spacing is required for perception of individual pieces of information. This spacing may vary depending on the production method used and the experience of the student. With 1 by 4 inch space between components, 1 by 8 inch spacing between two elements, adjacent textures must be significantly different from each other to be discriminated. The strength of the texture helps the student to prioritize information. The most important information is shown with the most strongest textures. White space, which is also called a dead zone between areas around labels within textures, enhances contrast between textures. In addition to changes in texture, changes in height gives them a clue that the information provided is different from previous area covered. Further, a title for the graphic will orient the student to the subject. A simple title should be added. For example, cross-section of an artery, aerial view of the campus. Planning tactile graphic is a critical step in producing a meaningful representation of a print graphic or illustration. This step may require as much time as actual production. Before preparing a graphic, teachers should take time to incubate ideas. They should synthesize the information that has been planned to illustrate. In addition, they also should think about the meaning to be attached to these symbols. This principle gives guidance regarding various properties of tactile graphic aids like areas, lines, symbols, keys, labels and their color. When we talk about areas of tactile graphics, it represents a region that has specific significance in the diagram. For this, we can consider the example of states or region in a map, the layer of soil and rock classifications in a geological diagram. Areas are usually concrete portions of any diagram. Before preparing tactile graphics, teachers should ensure to differentiate the area from surrounding areas. Also, there should be clear-cut demarcation of each areas in a tactile graph. For example, students should be able to identify the bars and space between the bars in a histogram. A line is linear information such as rivers, important geographic boundaries, pathways like circulatory system or electrical circuit in a graphic aid. When we consider math drawings, line may be used to represent the outline of a shape or indicate division, angles or a length to be measured. Lines may represent either concrete or imaginary information. It may also be a lead line to a label. Teachers can use lines, but they should ensure the purpose of it used in the graphic. Teachers use different types of symbols like text, point, alphabetic and numeric symbols. Each symbol has got different usage in tactile graphic aid. The text symbols are used frequently depending on the content. Text symbols may be indicated by order of appearance. For example, graph with two or more colored bars or in order of importance. For example, on a map, country being shown, then surrounding countries, then bodies of water. All text symbols are listed in the key first. Usually, each group is shown in alphabetical order. Then, a point symbol indicates a specific place within the graphic. It is usually placed in an area or on a line and represents specific data like a point in a line graph or a gland in an anatomy diagram. Teachers should be able to differentiate point symbol from a line and area used in the graphic. A label may be words or an alphabetic or numeric key used to identify an area, line or point symbol. Students can distinguish information more efficiently when whole words are used for labels. However, the use of whole words as label may add too much cluttering. So, teachers can use alphabets or numeric key to represent a label in the graphic. Labels can be placed directly on the tactile graphic. In case of inadequate spacing, it can also be placed near data with a lead line connecting label to the data. The data in a graphic that requires many details is keyed using textures, unlettered or numbered symbols. A key is used to explain textures and other keyed information. Similarly, a legend is a brief description accompanying an illustration. These key and legends are used to represent data on the tactile graphic. If the print image includes a key or legend, the same information is incorporated into the braille key. Information may be keyed when there is not enough space available on the graphic for the entire label. Using full labels on the graphic when space is available and keying some of the information when space is not available is acceptable. The use of full labels and keyed labels should be categorized as much as possible. Many students who read Braille also have some visual acuity. Colors can be used if it can help with discrimination of areas. Facts or data included in a tactile graphic should be selected based on purpose of the graphic. Teachers should also see the students' expected needs from the graphic. Teachers should not change the content or its meaning. They should seek additional help in interpreting content if material in the print diagram is not fully understood. When determining the content of a tactile graphic, teacher must carefully read text surrounding the graphic as well as other information such as end of chapter questions. In general, a single graphic should not contain more than 5 different area textures, 5 different line styles and 5 different types of point symbols to avoid cluttering. If more are needed to represent the information required, teachers can consider using an alphabetic key. Many print illustrations are too complex to show tactually without simplification. Care should be taken not to oversimplify because it may interfere with the comprehension and intended purpose of the diagram. Three-dimensional images are especially difficult to decode. When possible, teachers can simplify them to two-dimensional images. In some cases, one may need to show more than one view to include all of the content in the print graphic. First and foremost, the student should understand that tactile graphic is a representation of a print graphic. It is designed in the manner to be meaningful to them. It is not an exact reproduction. Teachers should ensure that the braille code used must be consistent with the transcription of the main body of text. Some eye-catching design techniques used in print, such as decorative borders that are irrelevant to the concept being taught, should be omitted. The tactile graphic should be positioned near the left margin of the page or indented according to the braille code in use, rather than centered. A blank line is required before and after the tactile graphic. A print graphic may be simplified as long as the original intent is not compromised. If the concept of depth is not required, a three-dimensional view should be changed to a two-dimensional view. Clutters occurs when components of the graphic are too close together or so similar that they become hard to distinguish tactually. In order to avoid this, clarity of components is improved by creating a blank space between adjacent textures. A break is not required when the contrast in textures and strength of lines are clear. If a student is required to measure a line or an object, it should not be lengthened or enlarged. Similarly, when a student is required to measure an angle, the rays should be extended. If they are required to measure distance, the scale and graphic must be revised proportionately. Transcribers' notes can be used to explain changes made to the print format. The use of transcribers' notes for the primary classes should be limited. A combination of symbols, keys, and words may be used to convey information. Maintain consistency throughout transcription when assigning alphabetic keys and textures to a particular item. Facing pages should be used when key and graphic will not fit on one page. Facing pages allow students to see both graphic and key without turning pages. The discussed points will aid teachers in preparing the tactile graphic materials to maximize its usage. Tactile graphic production methods most commonly used in school settings are collage and tooling method. Apart from this, tactile graphics are prepared using capsule paper and fuser. Also, tactile graphics are designed and prepared using computer. In collage method, graphic is produced using a combination of several methods like tooling, foil, and graphic embosser. The word collage means a collection of unrelated things grouped into a presentation. In tactile graphics, the term is used to describe the process of using textured items such as papers, fabrics, and threads. Textured items are used to represent the information in print graphic. Items are pasted to a flat surface, producing layers of the textures. One of the characteristics of a readable graphic is variation in height among the elements in the graphic in addition to a variation in texture. Using raised textures, the edge becomes its own line, eliminating one more texture that the student has to decode. The cost to produce collage graphics is less than other methods. They can be done without an expensive embosser, expensive paper, or a computer drawing program. Teachers and students can learn to produce their own graphics using collage method. In tooling method, a raised image on paper or aluminum diagram foil is produced. Specially designed tools are used to work from backside of the paper or foil. By this method, textures are embossed, creating the images on the front. Often these tools are also used in combination with other methods. Tactile graphics produced using capsule paper and fuser is often used in schools because it offers quick production with minimal supplies. Simple diagrams can be prepared and immediately delivered to the student. Teachers and students can also create their own graphics. The graphics produced using this method is also referred as swell graphics, puff pictures, and toaster graphics. In the process of preparing this swell graphics, a diagram image is transferred to capsule paper by photocopying, drawing by hand, or by printer. Capsule paper has been coated with millions of thermally formed microcapsules that respond to light energy. This causes the dark image on the paper to swell, creating the tactile graphic. Technology is providing more options for producing quality tactile graphics in a more efficient time frame than in the past. The options range from standard braille embossers in graphics mode to braille and graphic embossers that produce high resolution graphics. The new technologies, collectively known as rapid prototyping, fall into two basic categories: additive and subtractive. Additive technologies, as the name implies, add material to a substrate, whereas subtractive technologies remove material from a block or sheet of material. Both are computer based and requires the use of graphical design software. When creating an object, computer software converts a model into layers. In turn, each layer is processed to create an actual model.